Hey guys, Sleepy Reader here. I wanted to talk about. I picked up 10 comics today, but I've only read 3 of them so far, and I purposefully uh, decided to read what I thought would be the lightest ones first. I just felt like some fun superhero reading. Um, what's this picture? So I'll start with the vibe. I'm going to do of the 3. Start with my least favorite and go to my most favorite. Um, Vibe was okay. It was kind of a generic comic book superhero story. An origin story of sorts, I guess. Not a very deep origin story, just sort of a quick origin story. Um, Young hero discovers he has powers, and his life changes. He gets recruited by a super secret organization. Um, Somehow, the character just seemed generic to me. Although he's got all kinds of things that might on paper seem interesting in place about the death of his older brother and his second oldest brother being kind of a ne'er-do-well while he's kind of the clean-cut kid, and their relationship. And then this secret organization that recruits him, Argus, uh, seems to be very morally questionable. Very, very morally questionable, and that should be interesting too. Although these secret, morally questionable agencies of the United States government that seem to control superheroes and their activities seem to be everywhere in comic books right now. I kind of miss the old days where it seemed like superheroes were very independent and not controlled by the government or by some agency. Um, And I guess this will be a bit of a spoiler if you really don't want anything spoiled from this book. But there's this interesting scene. The agency is Argus, which appears in a lot of DC Comics. I think Steve Trevor is the head of it, or just a head of part of it, maybe. But we have this scene where they have imprisoned all these metahumans. I think metahumans who they tried to get work for them, or perhaps whom they created in some cases, who were not cooperative enough, so they just shut them up, shut them away. I think all of this kind of government agency whose basic goals are good, because they want to protect Earth from things like Darkseid and the like, but their methods are potentially evil. And perhaps that's a metaphor for how some people feel about Guantanamo Bay and things like that. Where parts of our government act above the law. So anyway, that's kind of interesting, although it's a heavy thing to go into, and yet it all feels kind of generic, and I don't. And it all ties into the Justice League of America. This is like a prelude to the Justice League of America. It's Vibe's prelude, what he goes through before we see him in the Justice League of America. So I'd say the only reason to really pick this up is if you're really into the Justice League of America and you want all the facets of it. Or if you just really trust Jeff Johns, he's kind of a co-writer here, and believe that all of this stuff will develop more deeply as time goes on. Because as it stands, it's just an okay comic. I don't feel bad having read it, but there certainly would be no loss if I had never read this comic book. Arsenal is a one and done issue. DC Universe presents Arsenal. I bought it because I just loved this cover, and I didn't know who Arsenal is, and I became curious. And I'm clueless. There's little pockets of the DC Universe that I paid no attention to. I did not know that Arsenal was a member of Red Hood and the Outlaws, and I did not realize that he is actually Speedy, the traditional sidekick of the Green Arrow. And there's this beautiful Ryan Sook cover. Ryan Sook is kind of, in my mind, like a modern equivalent of Gil Kane. there was a period where Gil Kane did almost every cover on Marvel Comics, and they were wonderful covers. But I think Gil Kane would be more remembered today. He is remembered, but he would be even more remembered today if he'd been the interior artist on more comics. If you're the interior artist on these memorable runs, then your work kind of goes down through the ages in trade paperbacks and collections and just people's memories. So Ryan Sook's a wonderful artist and does great covers, but it's kind of too bad he doesn't do more interiors. That said, I enjoyed the interior art. I mean, it was a more basic kind of art than Ryan Sook's, but it had a nice style and did a decent job of conveying the story and the action. On some pages it was more sketchy than others. And I enjoyed the story. It was told from Arsenal's point of view in first person, and he was an entertaining character. You know, it was also kind of a simple, basic, generic story, but it was told with verve and a lot of personality, and I enjoyed reading it. You don't need to read this. I think either if you're just, didn't have enough comic books to pick up that week, the way I did, and you want a fun superhero story, or you're really into Red Hood and the Outlaws and you know a lot about Speedy and Arsenal and the whole mythos there. But it was fun. I enjoyed it. I was glad I picked this up. And I was glad to just do a one-and-done story. It does say that the next issue is going to be about Starfire, so perhaps DC Universe, I think it's going to be canceled soon. Perhaps they're closing out with a bunch of solo adventures of characters in group books, or just characters in Red Hood and the Outlaws. It makes me a little bit curious about reading Red Hood and the Outlaws, which I've avoided. I saw some images when it first came out of those overly sexualized Starfire, and since I wasn't at all invested in Red Hood before, I just never looked into it. But it's a lot of fun. And Joe Keating is the writer of Morbius. I was sort of so-so on the first Morbius issue, but this makes me wonder what else interesting things he might get up to. And then the one I liked the most of these three was also very light reading. It was not so generic. It had what seemed to be an interesting plot, although I didn't fully understand it. I didn't fully get into it, maybe because it's part of a lot of ongoing Legion continuity. However, it was fun enough to read, and the art, I just loved the art, and I happily paid the money to view this art. For those of you who read the recent OMAC run with art by Keith Geffen and the inker Scott Koblish, this is the same team working in the same vein, the same style, which is basically extreme Kirby homage, Jack Kirby homage. And they do it here maybe even better than they did in the OMAC issues they did, which were very good. It's fun to look at every single panel. It seems like Keith Geffen has sort of on and off throughout his career been sort of a heavy Kirby imitator, but then other times taken on other styles. But he's really mastered this Kirby style at this point. I really like the way he draws women. They look, even though there's this kind of ridiculous cutaway, I don't know if it's ridiculous cutaway of her frontal lobes, he just draws them very strong and very vibrant. These are what women superheroes should look like to me. That's Phantom Girl, wearing a very different outfit that I'm used to her being in. Because I've mostly read the really old Legion comics, and then I've seen a lot of the 2 seasons of the Legion animated TV show, which I thought was pretty good. So I'm familiar enough with all these characters. There's these funny-looking aliens. And so there's two threads of the story following two different groups of the Legion. And one group has crash-landed in this mysterious village, mysterious place. And eventually we learn they are not on a planet. They are on the body of a Promethean, who are these giant, vastly giant, frozen in stone creatures that are found floating around the galaxy or the universe, which are creations of Jack Kirby and appeared now and then in The New Gods, but remained rather mysterious. I don't know if more about the Prometheans has been developed in other DC comics, but I'm really enjoying their appearance here. And there's this incredible 2-page spread as the Promethean is coming alive. That's just great stuff. It channels Kirby, but it has something of its own, and it's just very intense, very good artwork, highly enjoyable. We also get the return of the, what do you call them, the Fatal Five, who are the perennial Legion villains going way, way back. I don't even recognize them from what I remember about them from the early Legion comics. But anyway, it was a fun issue. As long as Geffen and Koblish stay on it, I think I'll be reading it. Because I'm going to be looking at this art over and over again. And what else did I want to say? I had Geffen does co-plot here, or co-write, as he did on OMAC, and I think when we see him collaborating with people, we get very good work. So, but I read or heard in someone's video that Geffen was just going to be on the Legion for a short period of time. So definitely follow his run here on the Legion, and then see what happens next with the Legion. So I guess I've added another comic book to the things I'm getting regularly, as I keep saying I want to cut them. So coming up, I'll talk about some more of the comic books of the week. I'm going to read. Probably next up for me is going to be Supergirl, Wonder Woman, Katana. I could do an all-woman video. But then also really looking forward to Saga and Daredevil. It's amazing how many DC books I ended up picking up this week. Part of it is, it seems like more often I'll have fun with a DC book. I can just pick it up, dive in, and have fun. But also there's that so many of them are at the $2.99 price point. I feel more likely to dive in and give them a shot. Wonder Woman I know, but like these I dove in and gave a shot just to see what they were like. As with the three I just reviewed, all of them $2.99, all of them ones I was just giving a try to. And I learned that I like Arsenal, and I learned that I want to follow the Legion as long as Keith Geffen is on it. So, fun times. Talk to you guys later.